been a little while since we've had one of these chats.
It sure has. I know a lot's happened in our world, both of our
Yeah.
worlds, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to connect with each other again. I read what you posted on Facebook. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Yeah. And it was good because it spurred me to read all of the different links that you posted and everything regarding what's happening in Charlottesville, and um, just another really good reminder that for both of us to be reading all the different sides of the story, of all of these stories, is really important. But I appreciated what you posted, and I appreciated what the other folks posted in response to that, with feeling like this is a scary time in our nation. And I believe that we all need to stand against evil in all of its forms, no matter who you voted for.
Yeah.
You need to call evil and stand against it.
Yeah, and I have to say, it was like reading your comment under my post was a real relief to me, because what I've been aware of is, like, because we haven't been having as many of these chats where the intention is to really connect with each other across, and hold the consciousness that we are standing on opposite sides of an aisle, right? We have had conversations where we're just friends and catching up, and you're telling me about your kids and I'm telling you about what's going on with me. But I've been aware that since we haven't had the space with your moving and some of the stuff that's been going on in my life, that without these intentional conversations, I've been watching how easy it is for me to go back into my stories and assumptions about you, as much as I love you and trust you. And then I watch this sort of shadowy, like, element of these voices grow, and it's the same voices that I have, like, when I read the news and I read, about people on the other side doing these things. It's so easy to start putting all of my blame and all of the reason that pain exists in the world is because of those people, right? So it not that I had that same towards you, but I watched that equivalency start to grow. Mm-hmm. And it made me aware of, like, oh my gosh, we need to have another one of these conversations, because I don't want that.
Yeah.
And so to read your comment was like this deep relief of, oh yeah, she's congruent with what I know of her to be.
Yes, that I am deeply disturbed and so sad and so angry that there are people that would act violently in that way. And I will say that the longer that we go not talking and having these kinds of conversations, and then I just read what you post on Facebook, then I start to believe that you think I'm all to blame for all of this. And then I think, oh my goodness, it would be really scary to have a conversation with her, because it would just be a finger in my face, like, this is all your fault, And I can see how, without intentional conversations, that relationships can drift apart, even without having talked about any of it. That
right.
you go here, and then you create the stories in your mind that reinforces what you are afraid of.
Right. That's fascinating, because I do talk to a lot of people about this, because people are fascinated that we have this relationship and that we've been doing this. And I get the sense that with people who do have relationships, either family or otherwise, with people across the aisle, that it's always this thing of, don't talk about it. Let's just not talk about it, because if we do, then pain and division will happen. But the problem is the division's happening anyway. And the pain is there, it's just not being acknowledged. And so it's this veneer of connection as opposed to like, no, let's really know each other and connect and try to understand each other and disagree where disagreement is needed.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think for me, like, and then I'm also just struck with, I think there's a nut here that it ties into actually what's going on right now with Charlottesville and with this ongoing public dialogue in general about racism in America and the, you know, and the and white privilege and that topic, right? And I perceive it as, if I acknowledge as a white person, a good white person, that I have racist elements in me, then that means I'm all bad. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? And so it's really hard to bring up this conversation with fellow good white people about like, actually you're being complicit, actually you're adding to the problem, actually you've got, you know, some issues with sitting on your privilege and not helping other people around that message can be received as I'm all bad. Right? And that, I think that's why it's really hard for people to take that in and really do some self-examination and look at like, okay, here are all the ways in which I have unconsciously been doing these things. Yeah. And yes, it's a shadow element, but that doesn't mean I'm all bad.
Right, right.
And so what it creates, that's hard for people to do because that's complex. It has to be all good or all bad. And so then we get into this situation where we can't, the conversation breaks down because it's like, I just need to be seen as good. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me that I'm all bad.
Right.
And that's what I just got when you were talking, that can happen even in these dialogues between us. And it doesn't have to be about racism or whatever. It could just be about whatever topic is up, is that if you disagree with me, you must see me as bad. And then I'm going to have to push you away.
Right. Right. It reminds me a little bit of the whole idea of objectivity in research and writing, to say that if you admit that you are biased, that you have a bias in your research or writing, then they say, oh, well, you need to just throw it all out the window. You know, there's no validity to that. But what if we all admitted that we are subjective?
Totally.
We exist in our own heads, in our own physical beings, and it's very difficult to get outside of that. So what if we just all admitted that we have biases? We do.
We can't not.
And we admit it, and then we're able to act and relate to others and make decisions based on knowing that I need to be held accountable for my biases, that I need people to be speaking into my life and saying, actually, Heidi, that comment that you made right there, that could have hurt somebody. No, I need that. I need those kind of people in my life. But it takes humility for sure to be able to admit your own biases, your own prejudices. And that's a hard place to be.
Well, yeah, it takes humility, and I can really appreciate the amount of personal strength it takes to take in that sort of information where somebody said, you just said something very hurtful, and to be able to hold that. Yeah. And not go into this crumpled place of, I'm so bad, now I have to make you wrong in order to make myself feel better.
Yeah. It goes back to the fear of shame again. None of us want to experience shame. And shame is such a powerful motivator in us being ugly to other people.
Yeah, and it's a power. We control other people too. I mean, it's powerful in us that we don't want to feel shame, And then we also use shaming other people to control them and try to make them behave the way that we want them to behave so we can feel safer.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
I do.
So,
One of the things in Charlottesville that has struck me is that so many of us are, and I will say us because I think it's everyone, are afraid of not being valued. But more than that, I think that there's a sense that if we can put everybody else down, it helps us feel more valued. Like I see it on all the different sides that the white supremacists that, like, you take the word supremacy, supreme. You want to be supreme. You want to be on top. You want to know that you count, that you're important, that you're valued.
mm-hmm.
But the word supremacy would mean better than everybody else. You know, that there's the word superior in there. But then you take a phrase like Black Lives Matter. Yes, we want to know we matter. My Black friends want to know that they matter, that their lives are important, that they're not expendable, that none of us are expendable. So I see that there's this desire for all of us to know that we are important, that we matter, that nobody is gonna say they're more important than we are. And yet, when I think about, my background as a Judeo-Christian world, with my Judeo-Christian worldview, that there's a scripture that says, consider others more important than yourself. And I go back to that and say, this fight to be the most important, or this fight to that is really rooted, I see it in fear of, well, like for the white supremacists, their big chant is, you will not replace us. Like this fear of being replaced. But if we all lived with this concept of consider others more important than ourselves, how can I champion you? How can I stand up for you? How can I help you win? Then I think it totally changes the face of it.
I am of two minds. Like, I can hear your words, and I know you well enough, and I know your heart to know the spirit in which you're saying it. Absolutely. And I am finding myself agitated around the parallels drawn between the white supremacist movement and the Black Lives Matter. To me, I see those messages as very different. Because, as you said, supremacy is on top, and Black Lives Matter is about our experience is that we have not ever had a seat at the table to the level that whites do. And we want a seat at the table, at that level table. Okay, so there's two different messages. Black Lives Matter is really Black Lives Matter too, TOO. And white supremacy is, no, you will not replace us because we like living at the top. So nobody else gets to be at the top. We get to be at the top. And so, like, there's this, like, like, I feel that.
No, I get that. And I
feel that rush of, like, no, don't equate those two. And I get the spirit of what you're saying. And I can connect to that. And I'm just also aware of, like, with the history of slavery in our country and Jim Crow and the prison industrial complex where Black men are incarcerated far more, and they're still slaves because they're being paid, pennies an hour. Like, they have like, to tell them to value other people more than themselves. I mean, they've already had to do that.
Right.
Yeah. And I also get, like, our personal journey as souls, as healthy souls, we all need to get to a place where we are not narcissistically looking at ourselves all the time,
Right.
and serving others more. So do you see like my struggle?
Yes, but I will say, I totally hear that, and I could see it in your face, that it was in your body language. And I think what I want to focus on is that there's a fear that's motivating both. And it's that fear that I can identify with, that fear on both sides. And for me as a white woman, what I do with that fear for me is to say that my job is to consider others more important than myself. So I'll make it personal for me. Mm-hmm. That if I can look at my Black friends and say they are more important than me, how can I help them win in society? How can I be someone who gives them a leg up, who helps them navigate this system that seems so against them? Then I feel like that is what I do with that fear.
Wow.
It's not about, and I don't need to fight for my place. I need to just be who God has called me to be, stand on truth and goodness and love, and stand in that place of encouraging and supporting others, and stand against evil in all its forms. I just tweeted that. I will stand against evil in all its forms. And that means on both sides of the coin, that if I see Blacks beating whites, there were stories of an elderly man who was part of the alt-right group that fell and was trampled, and somebody saw that and went to help him up. And so it is the violence that's even done against the perpetrators that I believe is wrong. So it's on both sides, and definitely the violence of the white supremacists is absolutely unjustifiable, and I will stand against that.
Mm-hmm. I was aware that when it shifted, when the conversation shifted out of out there, and when you said, okay, I'm going to own it for me and this is what I will do, I calmed down internally. It was like, oh, okay, there's the connection. And there's that, I could feel the reestablishment of like, oh, okay, I understand you, I get you, and I feel calmer now. Like, and just how that makes me aware of like how it's so easy to lose connection on a personal level when we start to really talk about things out there, and things out there really relate personally. I mean, those things happening out there are because we each individually are not doing our work to contain our shadow. But I do know, like, the focus of what we're trying to do is help people to relearn how to connect with each other when there's fundamental disagreement. So I just really appreciated like that reminder of like, oh, okay, it's about how do we ground our disagreement? How do we ground it here and have and be connected to the issue here?
Yes. Because when it comes down to it, I can say anything I want about all of that out there, what's going on out there, and those people, and spout anything I want. But it comes down to individual accountability, individual responsibility. What am I going to do with it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
One of the things that convicted me recently was just in all of the discussions of race that are going on in our country. I thought, how often am I asking an African American to tell me their story of their experience here? What's it been like for you? What racism have you experienced?
Mm-hmm.
And I have done it with people I've sat next to on the plane, or a lady at the checkout counter at the grocery store. And it's been really cool to hear their stories and to find that place of deep empathy and compassion. And then I think to find people that have said, honestly, there was one man who told me, I grew up in a family where I was felt valued, and in my community I felt valued, and honestly I didn't experience a lot of racism. And that
Mm-hmm.
was cool to hear too, that
Mm-hmm.
wow, there are folks out there who haven't experienced that.
Mm-hmm. 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 Hmm. That's great. I mean, just asking people for their stories.
I do wonder what it would be like, and I saw somebody post this, um, those people who have an uncle or a dad or someone in their family that's part of the white supremacy movement or the whole neo-Nazi business. What would it be like to sit down and talk to them about what they're afraid of, and about what is driving this, and about what um, what do they see down the road in America for if this keeps going, and are there more healthy ways of um, exercising your right to free speech that are not going to result in what happened in Charlottesville? Are there
Right.
ways to have peaceful protests that will not result in 3 people being killed? Is that the kind of America that we want to live in? Is that the kind of America we want for our children? And maybe they would say, yeah, actually that is, and then I don't know what you would do with that. I think you would have to find some point to be able to put your foot down and say, well, that isn't the
Right.
kind of America I want for my children.
Right. That reminds me of the moment. Did you watch that movie Accidental Courtesy about Daryl Davis?
I saw clips of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the the climax of the movie is basically when he sat down, Daryl Davis representing, the side of dialogue. Let's engage with the white supremacists, make friends,
Uh-huh.
and dismantle them through kindness. And he can, his friendships with white supremacists led a lot of KKK leaders to actually leave the KKK.
Yeah, and he collected all of those.
Right.
It's amazing.
And then he sat down with some Black Lives Matter activists, and there was a significant amount of clashing between him and them because they were both holding the consciousness that their approach was best. Daryl being for the side of dialogue, and Black Lives Matter actually being for the side of no more.
Yeah.
Just we're a brick wall.
Right.
No more.
Right.
And so yeah, and this came up at the panel that we spoke on at town hall, but it like this awareness that there's need for both.
Right.
Because if you do engage with a white supremacist, it's like, no, actually I want to eradicate all people of color, all Jews. No, we got to be a brick wall against that. Dialogue is not going to do anything with that.
Right.
So,
and yet it still may be in those family contexts that if people can be listened to and find heart connection and find reasons, motivated reasons internally to go about it differently, then I mean that's I still think that we still have to try.
Oh, absolutely. We have to try. I mean, I feel like that should be the first resort, that always should be the first thing that we do, is at least try and not write people off automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that the violence most definitely disturbed me and continues to disturb me. But it's also the verbal violence, the quotes that I've read that people were yelling to each other, and that is just, I mean, it's abusive in every sense of the word, and I wonder, um, it's part and parcel. It all goes together. I think that the words spur the physical violence, and the physical violence spurs the verbal violence, and it goes together. Um, but there are a lot of people not resorting to physical violence and thinking, hey, I'm doing a good thing here because I'm not being physically violent. And yet their words are very violent.
Right. And they're not taking responsibility for that.
Yes, and I will stand against that because I believe that is another form of evil that I will be a brick wall against that and say
Right.
there is no place for that in my America.
Yes.
I
No, I agree. Absolutely. And that's why I valued.
but not in a way that
Yeah.
harms others with your words.
Right. Right. Nonviolent communication
Nonviolent.
can work even when you're talking with people that you disagree with. Yeah.
Right. And even in the middle of a protest like that, can we have enough self-control to not be yelling terrible, cruel things at each other?
Mm-hmm. I agree. Thank you, Heidi. I feel like this has really been what I needed as far as like feeling that connection with you again over something that has been, it's really been tearing at me.
Yeah.
And not that we've solved anything here, but I take heart knowing that you're an ally in standing against hate. And
Yeah.
that means a lot.
Yeah. And I do think you made a really good point. We talked for a few minutes before we started recording, and you said that you were looking for me and some of my friends to be posting things on social media that will speak out against it. And I want to apologize to you for seeming complicit when that's not my heart.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many times that I see stuff going on and think, oh my goodness, I just don't even want to get into that mess and be a part of it in any way. I just want to stay away. And that's part of my conflict avoidance anyway.
Right.
But I do think that you made a good point for me, and it's convicting for me to say I have a social responsibility, especially as a leader in the effort to create connections across the sides, to say, what are we allies on?
Right.
And we both stand against hate and against evil in all its forms.
Mm-hmm.
And so I apologize, and I want to do a better job of standing up for what's right and what's true and what's good in what I post. And
Thank you for that. I think the reason why I didn't actually bring it up in our call is when you'd mentioned you did that tweet, I realized that I'm not monitoring all of your social media. So if you're not doing it on Facebook or when I see it, then it's too easy to think, oh, well, she's not doing it, or Joy isn't doing it. The other, one of our friends who came in to Seattle, it made me aware of like, maybe I just need to check with them first before I make this assumption that they're being quiet and complicit. So, and I'm also hearing that you want to be more proactive about having a stronger voice about that, and I appreciate that.
Yes, I do. I think I've stayed out of that sphere for so long, but I obviously jumped in with both feet last November, and so
Yeah.
I am a part of the fray and can't run away from that and stay quiet. So
Right. And it was because I haven't been posting as much recently too. And when I did that Facebook post, and one of the responses was, thank you so much. I'd been craving to hear your opinion on this, your voice on this, and realizing, oh wow, it is important that we show up.
yes.
That all of us show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
So thanks for showing up with me.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for this dialogue. It's important. We remain connected.
Yay. And let's talk again soon.
All right.